Hello everyone, my name is FlareBlitzed here, and we've returned back to the letter. Now, before we start this game again, I'm just going to say that there are so many words in this game which are either really complex or I've never heard of before. So if I can't pronounce a particular word or a phrase, don't just hammer me in the comments, just put something nice that this is how it's pronounced like this or how it's pronounced like that. Just go with the flow, be respectful for one another as well. I don't like it when people just start necking at each other for the smallest reasons. Anyways, as it looks like I'm the one on the clock starting to go, I might as well eat, grabbing some fish and chips from one of the street food stalls. I found a table to spend time with a copy of that book, The Crime of Love, since Rebecca left with the book I wanted. I've read this one before, along with the rest of his works. This would be the 18th time, in fact. But it's always nice to read it through again, when I don't have the time to enjoy something new. Besides, when you're dealing with people so filthy rich that they just end up being plain filthy, you need good old Marquis sound advice. I don't know French or the language this is in, so I'm not going to try and pronounce this. The wound being without any consequence. Of course, it's folly to think that things have no consequence when everything actually does. Brea Realty Corporation Nuxburn branch isn't too far off from the city centre, just a few blocks away, and I can easily eat and walk. I'd rather use the time to rest before I go into a flurry of activity. No doubt there'll be so much to do once we get hands on with the mansion. Still a lot better than working on another condo, at least. Sure, no matter how much BRC and the old owners put into the restoration and preservation of the place, any big repairs would be superficial at most. I am quite certain that in their haste to sell the property, they did a rush job. It isn't an infrequent thing to do despite how it is frowned upon. There'll be a lot of hidden issues that I will need to weed out, and I have to make sure I find every single one of them, especially the more serious damages. Structural integrity is definitely on top of the list we will have to consider. The building might look sturdy, but is centuries old. That alone will likely pose a few problems here and there, put limitations of what we can do. Besides, despite how much I detest these rich snobs, they can pay rather handsomely. So long as I do an excellent job and do more than necessary, those two things always made sure the referrals keep coming. I don't even have to hunt down projects for myself. When I do go up to BRC's office, I can't help but stop and stare when I enter the building. With the lunch hour closing, employees should have been back already, if they still aren't filtering through the doors. I got there as a Saturday, but people probably feel tired and lazy to be working on a weekend. But they're still on the clock and not bumming around wasting company time on extended lunch breaks and cigarette sessions. The office is spacious, as it is with these big corporations. Each person is given their own little space and what usually is a 2x2 meter cubicle. There's a lot more empty chairs than there are actual people working at their desks. It reminds me far too much of my last day at Proviso, don't know how to pronounce that, projects during the massive layoffs due to the Irish economic crisis. But it isn't just that though. Everything is as quiet as a grave. It's as if these people are merely ghosts. Speaking of ghosts, Santos comes in through the door, looking as if she's just seen one. She looks at me, wide-eyed like a deer caught in the headlights, ready to bolt at any moment. I'd ask out of concern, but I feel it's not my position to do so. What if it's something personal? I'll simply be overstepping my boundaries. Really, it's none of my business. I presume that Miss Cooper told you why I'm here, Miss Santos. Oh yeah, sorry, I just got back from lunch, you know. But it won't take too long, don't worry. Of course it won't. This whole project has established itself to be a matter done in haste. I do hope it doesn't mean that people are being careless in their duties. She flinches and looks like she doesn't quite know how to respond to that. Thankfully, instead of opening her mouth, she leads the way towards her station and goes to fetch the floor plans. It won't take too long, as she said, but it does take a bit. Time spent to compose herself, most likely. You know, we usually just email these things. I prefer the real thing. Not that you would know. You probably have your nose stuck in front of a smartphone when you're not working, and even when you should be working. Playing those mindless, addictive games. I definitely wish Chris would stop playing that Batcat thingy during work hours too. I know what you mean. Digital painting is nice, but nothing beats the smell of real print. Not that I go and smell prints like a crazy person, but you know, the real thing is different. Wait, what? Yes, nothing is quite like the real thing. And here they are as they are. Good. Checking out the floor plans, I see that I'll have a lot going for me. Now that I know how Ray felt when he found the Central Park West building floor plans from that one movie. This is why I became an architecture in the first place. Jacobean style at its finest is a thing of beauty. Look at these gorgeous rooms, the delicate harmony between empty spaces. And speaking of empty spaces, there's something rather odd about these ones. I feel a bit silly saying it out loud because I've never lived in such a big house, let alone a mansion, but during the tour I had the distinct impression that the rooms were bigger. Maybe the scale is wrong, it's not much of a problem, it's an old house. There had been little details here and there that I would have to address during the open house too, but it was all forgotten in the wake of Miss Santos' incident and the trouble with ownership. If a wine cellar is going to be a problem, I shudder to think what sort of repairs they did to the place. There might have been things that were swept under the rug, pushed to the dark corner of the rooms, and hidden away in barrels. All the damage could have been covered up. There had been floods due to heavy rain in West England just last year, after all, and if there's any sort of damage to the house's foundation, there's going to be a lot of work. I was not able to look at the attic as well. For all I know, a whole family of vermin could have made their nests there. Working with pest control is always the worst. The sheer size of this place is staggering. Even if I just say it was a whole lot. Even if I just... Oh my god, where's my hair today? Even if I did just say it was a lot smaller than I thought, I might just be biting off more than I can chew, but who doesn't like a good challenge? First things first, I'll have to... So do you want a coffee? The one from the staff room is pretty decent. There's really no need. I'm sure you have rules against it. Rules against bringing some coffee? That's ridiculous, and even if there were regulations against it, nobody's really here to tell Sir John. I've already bought 2 mugs and I'm not going to drink them on my own. Come on. I have to stamp down my annoyance at being distracted. Seeing the girl, the young woman though, it looks like she has a lot on her mind. If babbling is her way of dealing with stray thoughts, I'm not really the one she should be babbling to. Yeah, saying something is better than not saying anything at all. Great. You have to say something. I gave her time to speak up, but when she just stares, I clear my throat. Yes, you have something to say? As embarrassment creeps up on her face, I snatch one of those coffees from her and take a sip. Too hot! Just thinking and speaking off the record, it must have been fun. What you do? You go to people's houses and you make them, well, pretty. You're sharing your art with them. It's a little bit more complex than that, but if you put it that way, it is fun. I would have done it for 7 years if it wasn't a little bit fun, I guess. These big clients always have paintings in their homes. Do you have a supplier for art pieces? I didn't expect to hear such a question from her. Seeing how well she handled herself yesterday, I didn't doubt then why she was assigned to an important sale like the Ermengarde Mansion, despite the little accident she had. Now, she just looks too young, too nervous and unsure of herself. although her enthusiasm must make up for that in spades. In fact, I wouldn't have believed it if she had introduced herself the way she is at the moment. Why, watching her now, she actually looks like she should still be in college. Acts a bit like it too when I think about it. I thought she was a teen slumming it out in the mansion when I first saw her there, lying on the ground. Surprise, surprise, she turned out to be one of the estate agents handling the property. I don't even know what to make of that whole meltdown that happened with that strange document. If I were the client, I would have been very upset. She'd be in hot water for it. The clients usually support artists of their own choice, and if they don't, I'm always happy to refer those that I know. That's cool. They're very picky. I don't think a hobbyist would have an easy time getting their work sold. Hey, I'll have you know I was a student of the fine arts, and yet here you are selling properties. Maybe you weren't a very fine student for the arts. Maybe I took that a bit too far. But again, that's gone up a bit. She bites her cheek, and it looks like she's barely holding herself back. It's not like I had a choice. She muttered it under her breath. I barely even heard it. But the hurt is there. And it makes one wonder what brought it on. Although it is understandable. If her reason's what I think it is, very few people make it big in the art world. I can see why she'd be upset about it with that enthusiasm. I didn't have a choice when I left Ireland. It was that or years of unemployment. The recession and the toll it took in the construction industry was way out of anyone's control. I don't know what choice she wasn't able to make, whether it was about her being at an art school or something else. But the world isn't a fair place, and the sooner she accepts it the better. Still, with that forlorn look on her face, I can't help but sigh. The girl reminds me far too much of myself when I was younger. Well, if you're thinking of commissioning your paintings, I'll have to see your work first. Oh, it's not. I didn't mean it like that. I don't have any paintings. Really? You sounded a lot like you still did art or want to. Now I'm starting to worry that you might just like the smell of paint. I'm not a paint huffer, sheesh. I just mean I don't make much anymore. I don't really have the time for it. The tools and materials aren't exactly cheap either. Everything has a price. It sounds like you're making excuses for something you're presumably passionate about. If you really want to practice art, a little out of your wallet isn't much. It's not that simple. It's not. Life's simple. People just like to make it complex. Speaking of the record, I have some advice for you, kid. Either go for what you want, or stop thinking about it when you have something else. That is, unless you enjoy making yourself miserable, then by all means. You know, if you wanted to look at the floor plans without me bothering you, you could have just said so. Would you have left me alone? We'll never know now, will we? A strained air settles in the room afterwards. It doesn't help that she doesn't immediately leave, as she said, lingering awkwardly by the door with that downcast expression. It's clear there's more she means to say, perhaps even to defend herself and her choices in life. Or is he expecting me to dish out more of that advice? It's an awkward affair, and I chose to hightail out of the realty office as quick as I can. Though I am able to keep myself professional at all times, does not mean I like it. Okay. New there with our friend. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't update us with new stuff within the journal. So, for example, Marianne befriended Rebecca Gales. That did not show up as a pop-up. And now we're on our way towards floor plans. Marianne visited BRC to pick up floor plans. She was assisted by Isabel Santos, and the two shared a brief talk about art, which ended up Marianne leaving a piece of advice to Isabel, which she probably reluctantly actually put forward in the first place. For I am able to keep myself okay, and seeing that most of the day has already gone by before I realised it, I chose to head back to my flat instead, despite today being a Saturday. So, no fun, but at least this way I can definitely avoid another unpleasant encounter, considering how much I'll be seeing whiskey in the near foreseeable future. I have a feeling I'll need all the rest of the weekend can give me. For the first time in a long while, excited as I am to work on a mansion, I can't wait to be over and done with this project. October the 24th, on Monday. Monday couldn't wait any sooner. After taking the floor plans from Miss Santos the day before the last, I spent most of my Sunday drawing up plans and calling in my suppliers. Although no design choices have been made yet, I'm quite sure they'd want high-end appliances, the most expensive materials and the most prestigious everything. They usually did, these rich types, based from experience at least. Given how badly this whole thing started, it wouldn't hurt to be prepared. I have to check myself, making sure I'm not playing with my gloves as one of the other building tenants takes the elevator up with me. It makes me self-conscious when the woman's eyes go over me, and I'm sure she was going to point out some perceived flaw in my physical appearance. But I'm saved from being paranoid when they went off a few floors later. Still, ride to my floor is nerve-wracking. The Wrights lived at the very top, the penthouse, the blank de la blank, when it comes to that and urban living. Just getting access to the place is an ordeal all of its own. I had to jump so many hoops, so many security checks just to secure a key card. Not only because of building management, but because of the Wrights' personal security. It felt like I'm being segregated for a crime. And not visiting a client at their home. Even when their personal assistant called out to help verify my presence, the process is aggravated rather than hastened. Speaking of the devil, the elevator door opens and I'm greeted by none other than Whiskey's not so little lacquery. I do apologise if I kept Mr. and Mrs. Wright waiting, but I'm here now and I'm ready. So if I may, where are they? They've just woken up, but they should be down soon. I'm surprised to see you made it through security and only 5 minutes late. You said I'd be through security soon, and it took half an hour. Define soon in this context. I'd make myself comfortable if I were you. I'm going to put the kettle on. Okay. About the tea, I don't want to intrude or anything. The sir does not like being woken up by whistling, but who am I to deny tea to a guest? He shows me to the couch before drifting off towards the kitchen, quietly pulling out a teapot, cups and all sort of other things in preparation for tea. I ignore the animosity towards his employer that his words implied. I wouldn't be too surprised if Whiskey's own people don't like him. Accepting the quiet and isolation instead, I brace myself for what's to come. In this case, soon apparently means more than 5 minutes, or even 10. I sat in their living room, just waiting, and when the kettle starts whistling and the tea has been served, I continue to wait. At least the silence is relaxing. But then, there's a crash! I nearly spilled tea all over my lap in surprise, and I look up expecting security to come running. In the man at the kitchen counter continues to fix breakfast like he heard nothing. I don't want to speak up about it because he looks far too absorbed in his cooking, and I don't want to be the cause of burnt food or worse. However, there's something in me that just wants to figure out what that was, although I am normally not this nosy. Of course I should check it out. What else could I do in this spare time? Check it out. The crash came from the hallways. Actually, let's just look at this branch itself. Now, we took the top path, and this one leads to a lot more than I should be dealing with. A little bit more here, but there's much more up here, diverging into 2 different branches again. Which one we take probably determines on the choices we made earlier in this game, with the other characters that is. Mainly Hannah, I believe. The crash came from the hallway and I really shouldn't be snooping about. but it's just concern. Yeah, concern that urges me to check it out. Sneaking a glance at the butler, I consider sneaking off, but... Excuse me, but where's the Baloo? He barely looks my way before pointing a spatula towards the hallway. It's a good excuse as any, and if I'm caught lingering longer than I should, I could just excuse myself and say that I wasn't sure which door led me to where. Still, looking into the hallway reveals nothing. I don't see anything that might have caused the crash. The hall, like the rest of the place, is in pristine condition. There are several doors for not only the toilet but also presumably rooms for their butler and for other members of the staff. As I stand there, however, something feels definitely out of place. One of the doors, the nearest within my reach, stands ajar, and from inside a light flickers in... Okay, it could simply be a light bulb that needs replacing, but the thought of it in a place so well taken care of seems off. I think that maybe this is where the crash came from. Instead, I could spy a radio line on the floor. That's probably it, right? Maybe one of the help, in a hurry to get out of the room, knocked over it in the process. If that's all it is, I should really leave it alone. As I turn to leave, the sound of static fills the air and a man's tiny voice interrupts the silence. At 7 in the morning, students found at 5 dead. Why am I still standing here? Assumed to have fallen from her dormitory window. This seems familiar, doesn't it? Authorities are investigating the possibility of foul play. Like I've heard that before. Reporting from Shane Luckian of Galway AM. Whoa, that's great. That caught me off guard as well, for goodness sakes. I recall backing away from whatever that was. Where did that take me from? Marine visitor Wright's penthouse to discuss with the couple. While waiting for them, Marine decided to investigate a violent crash she heard in the hallway. There was something odd. Something paranormal as well. Branching tree. But still nothing else, so the divergence still can go one way or another. I recoil, backing away from whatever that was. In the process, I trip backwards on my feet and I wait for the pain of falling flat on my back. But instead, I feel a hand on my back and see the smug smile of, well, guess who? Oh, don't tell me you're reporting to work drunk, Mint. Of course I know exactly who that voice belongs to. It just has to be him. Marianne hammered on the job. That would be something. But wouldn't dream of it, Whiskey. You're allowed to be if you wanted. Though it's a bit early for it, so thanks for the save. Really, it is much appreciated, even though the circumstances during our first meeting were not savoury or wholesome. I can't bring myself to completely look at Mr. Wright in a bad light. Nothing came out of it, after all. It's no trouble at all. I've been told I have a gift for catching pretty ladies, being a great catcher myself. Is that so? Would you say you'll be able to catch if another man were to pitch? Perhaps, but I wouldn't know. I don't play baseball, Mint. Right, of course you don't. I can't help but chuckle at my little joke, but it looks like it completely went over his head. If he had understood it, I guess it would have been inappropriate. He is my client after all. Let's save. Alright, where's Mrs. Wright? Okay, let's look at this. Increase, decrease? It'd probably increase. Whatever little camera, whatever it is, I had with Whiskey is forgotten, however. Don't have that highlighted. I straighten up and glance behind him, only to find that he's on his own. Mrs. Wright is still absent. I still remember my place and why I'm here. To continue in such a manner with her husband would feel like a breach of trust between my client and I. Since you are here, I don't suppose Mrs. Wright is on her way down. It is 10:30 after all. She'll be down here in a moment. For now, you have me. Can't I just chat with a good friend? I don't think a night where we talked like two drunk yitchies makes us good friends. And if you have any bit of sense, it's better to forget that night ever happened. What? Why not? It's a good night, if a bit boring. You know exactly why. We both know what your intentions were that night, and to find out that you're married, if there's even an ounce of decency in you, if you'd like the world to be a little less messed up, you'll remember your wife and what you almost did to your Mrs. Wright. It's better to get that out of the way once and for all. Well, no need to be such a killjoy about that. The dead air between us, because it can't be anything else but that, is broken as a lively voice calls out from the loft. Marianne, I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long. I know we agreed we'd start at 10, but mornings just simply do not agree with me. Not one bit. It's been like this since I've been in university. It's 5 minutes to 11 o'clock. These high-end clients sure like to be fashionably late. I'm used to it though, much like how I'm used to so many years of hearing people mispronounce my name. Besides, berating or correcting my client would be extremely impolite, and Marianne doesn't sound too bad when she says it. To be fair, it doesn't seem like she's late on purpose. I see you're up, darling. You know, you could have woken me up as well. Why are you showing Marianne around? Not that there's much to see. This place is so tiny compared to the mansion. I'm more worried about the way she stares at me, judging. Such a look. It doesn't suit her pretty face at all. Just seeing Miss Wright reminds me too much of her, and maybe I'm starting to hear her again. See her again, when I shouldn't. I should have left it all behind, forgotten it. To think she would be looking at me that way, I can just feel my hands tremble. Each of these characters have quite a dark backstory to them. Oh yes, just showing her around and getting to know each other. Isn't that right, Marianne? Yes, of course. And your butler was making breakfast a while ago, so if you want to get right to that, breakfast would be lovely. There is no denying the clients when they invite me over to the table. Though it is too personal to share a meal in their home, it would be terribly rude to deny their invitation. Besides, the pancakes did look and smell heavenly. Oh, look at all that. Look at those syrups. Look at the berries on there. Oh, it's so delicious. Makes me want pancakes now. A bowl of cold clotted cream, fruits, syrup, jams, and other spreads are laid out next to them, making for a colourful arrangement. If this was a bunch of friends, I would have gladly helped myself to the whole lot. But as it is, I just sectioned a few pieces of pancakes and topped it off with lemon and sugar. You know, I was a tiny bit serious when I said I wanted a helipad. And you're not serious about the greenhouse, the vineyard, and the stables. Well, I do want those too, but I know you'll agree to those. We're talking about interiors, honey. You don't handle exterior designs, and whatever handles those sort of projects, do you, Marianne? I'm able, actually, and willing to take a project of that nature. I was an architect to an island before, of course. That's another contract entirely. I also suggest we finish the house itself before working on any additionals to the rest of the property. There won't be any problems about ownership this time, will there? Pardon if I'm crossing the line, but the acquisition was rather quick. Oh, don't you worry, we've got everything sorted. This time around, I've talked to Miss Cooper and Mr. John from BRC. Oh, and as well as the old owners. Everything has been paid in full, and all we're waiting for is the paperwork from the land registry. They're letting us move in as soon as we please. It's not like they were living there in the first place. That's good to hear. The problems that could arise from renovating another person's home would be, well, let's not dwell on it. First off, we'll want to know how you want the place to look. It's pretty furnished as is, but I understand if you want to modernize the whole thing. Actually, I'd prefer to keep the place as it is, but at the same time I want modern appliances. You worked on the Ludgate's Christchurch summer residence. I do remember there being an oven. I thought there was a simple drawer before. Make them look vintage, antique, blend in with the rest of the decor. Customize appliances then. I could find someone for that, and if you can tell me what you specifically want, it'll hasten up the process. We're talking about electronic appliance manufacturers if you have a preferred brand to work with. Splendid! So what is next on our agenda? All the other interior designers we've hired in the past did not have us this involved. I stop. What sort of half-baked designer did that? If I knew who they were, I would have words. This isn't the time or place for it. However, instead I use this brief pause to pull out the floor plans I brought with me. We'll have to figure out what you want to do with the rooms. Here, we can have a quick run through. What is that little room next to the master's bedroom? Master's bedroom, first floor. Oh yeah, the balcony? Oh, as far as I can tell I saw it, it's a second bedroom of sorts. Used apparently for the ladies in waiting who have served Lady Charlotte Ermengrade, which is strange, as that isn't the norm for these sort of houses. Well, we're not stuffing Jonas in there, he won't fit. You don't suppose we could turn it into a walk-in closet and a dressing room? I love fashion, but do we really need to turn an entire room into a walk-in closet, dear? We'll have large closets and wardrooms in the bedroom already, says one who takes 3/5 of our closet. 3/5 of our closet, sorry. Well, what do you suggest we do with it? I thought a utility room of some sort would be nice, a craft room where I could do fun things, or maybe a children's room might be nice, you know, for when Kyle... Oh my, they're also informed with a little girl named Kyle, or when Kyle comes over, or if Rosalie visits when she has a baby. 1. You are not inviting that witch, and 2. There's a whole mansion for Kyle to play in. We don't need a children's room, and you don't even do arts and crafts. I like to turn the guest room and the study into my personal office, by the way, if you don't mind. You can turn it into a personal office if I can have my utility room. It's just one room of the many. I'm taking that room for myself no matter what you say, dearie, so you might as well take this deal. You're always doing out of business anyway. The real problem is the theatre. Whatever are we going to do with all that space? Fine. We could turn it into our own personal cinema, I suppose. Might as well have it, if you plan on not having a tally in the parlour. Yes, well, I don't want guests to be glued to the tally when they come over for a meal and some tea. By the look of things, we can keep the rooms as what they are on the ground floor though. The ballroom would be perfect for parties. Do we really need a dining hall though? I don't suppose we can't convert it into a garage? What for? You could park your cars outside. What about that room, right there in the northwest corner? That's sleeping quarters for the household help. Oh, that is perfect. Jonas would be glad if we have other staff members who stayed in. It'd be convenient so they don't have to make the trip from Luxburn to the mansion when they're needed. You definitely need a lot more people to maintain a property of this size. The mansion is really a lot bigger than I thought. Look at all these rooms. I don't even know there was a music room next to the parlour because of what happened. There was a grand piano in there too, when we checked during the tour. Did you hear that, Luke? Maybe you can take up playing the piano again. You should have seen him when we were younger, Marianne. It's not like I was very good with the thing. Oh, hush you. You were no Mozart, but I loved hearing you play nonetheless. I know how to pronounce Mozart, by the way. He'd come over to my house and he'd play such fun tunes. He'd sing too and I'd dance, and it was just... Mr. Wright playing the piano. I can't imagine it. But the earnest way in which Mrs. Wright said so told otherwise. Anyway, what do you think of these plans, Marianne? Are we not even going to consider one of my requests? Not even just the closet or just the garage? No, that isn't fair. You'll not be the only one who's going to be living there. I hardly see how that's unfair. I told you, you are getting your office and your theatre, the greenhouse, the vineyard, and the stables. That sounds fair, does it not, Marianne? This looks like it increases our relationship with Hannah, but decreases with our friend in the codes, Luke. Journal. Next. A very spooked Marianne accidentally bumped into Luke Wright. Although things were awkward between the two, Marianne insisted they keep things professional and simply forgot about what happened nights ago. He probably would not, though, because he is very unprofessional. Yeah, sounds fair. Yeah, so let's look at this. Yep, Hannah relationship increase. I think Luke's one slightly decreased there. Mrs. Wright has her points, though I really don't want to butt into the spat of a husband and wife. Yeah. But with the way the two were looking at me to settle this, I might as well just keep to the facts instead of giving opinions. Mrs. Wright, your plan isn't quite feasible from an architectural perspective. I'm not even sure how much we could do without closer inspection. But what about the garage at least? A walk-in closet is easy enough, but the garage... See, a garage isn't architecturally feasible, and it isn't going to be financially sound as well. We're already going to spend a lot on your other requests. You have several acres of land to park on already. What, did you calculate that on the fly? Financially sound on my foot. You're probably just thinking up of imaginary numbers. Might I remind you that I was a financial manager? I also looked over and approved the expenses of other houses. I know the rough costs of these things by now, love. Master in business administration, major in accounting, sometimes I think you forget that I'm not as dumb as I act. That catches my attention more than anything. It sounds more unbelievable than Whiskey playing the piano. She really doesn't seem like the type. Business administration and accounting? What university? Luxburn U, of course. Go Lux Dragons, red and gold. Excuse me. How about we move this chit-chat ahead and do whatever needs to be done sometime today? I had to cancel my appointments for this, you know. We might as well do a proper inspection with the designer this time, just to get it out of the way. Yes, no time like the present. You want a thorough inspection, might as well do it now. We actually took another look at the property yesterday, though it was brief. But I'm sure you would want to see it yourself to spot anything we might have missed. It's not like I have much of a choice, do I? Okay, journal time. October 24th. Next page. The mansion's agreements we discussed over breakfast during the meeting. The right couple had agreed about the mansion's arrangements. In the end, they decided a visit was Saturday, yeah. Riding to the Ermengarde Mansion in their raid. So, Royce, I should know, Rolls Royce, is an awkward affair, sorry. Not only am I worried about scruffing the expensive leather seats, but I'm also worried about getting in the middle of another couple's spat. With the tension thick in the air, I can feel them starting at each other any time. Nobody is saying anything. Up until Mr. Wright tells his valet to turn the damn radio off. And for a moment, I think he might start. But instead, he just stays quiet, and so does the rest of us. In the end, the sufferable silence stays. I have never been so glad to see a house. Yeah, those two are quite something. Stepping out of the car and up to the mansion meant the end of an uncomfortable ride, and I can finally take a deep breath of fresh air. What, despite the seats of a comfortable Rolls Royce? Rolls Royce is the byword of luxury. The beauty of a place never fails to make me gaze and wonder every time I see it as well. Mrs. Wright moves towards the front door, keys in hand, and I can already hear Mr. Wright plotting. Alright, Jonas, we're going to go in, but I want you to look around the place. Familiarize yourself with it. Know every nook and cranny, every inch of the lot. Go and see where we can put that vineyard and the other things we talked about. We'll want to know where to station security as well, so go around the perimeter and figure it out. Scout the property and circle the perimeter on foot. You do know this is 46 acres of land, sir. Well, you are not driving the car over the grass. put those long spidery legs of yours to good use. I didn't hire you to stand around and look intimidating. Go, mush. Someday, I'd like to ask how Jonas can even stand and tolerate the man. Yeah, I would as well. Why doesn't he just quit? Certainly the pay can't be that good. Even if I'm a bit put off by our mature employer, and the only thing that keeps me from bailing is the fact they've already signed a contract. At least I'll be working with them during the duration of the project. He works with them every day. Sometimes I think you hired me to make me suffer for your amusement. Someday I'd ask. But I feel a bit bad for him. I feel bad for the butler as well. If it's any consolation, he'll be away from Mr. Wright, if only for a little while. We're able to enter the mansion after a bit of standing out there in the sun. This wretched, strange sunlight that is far too alien and rare. There had been a bit of a problem with the misuse of not knowing which key was which. The first item on the agenda would be the grand staircase. It seemed sturdy during the open house, but with closer inspection might say otherwise. There are no obvious marks of damage nor wear and tear, probably refretted during renovation. Peeking under the grand carpet, the wood is properly installed with the bark placed down to prevent cupping. The carpet itself could use a vacuum though. Structural conditions, from what I can see without actually dismantling the thing, look to be in good shape. And the handrails and support posts are firm. The work on it should be commended. I can't look much more into the rest of the foyer, however, because Mr. Wright starts to hurry us in checking the dining hall. So, what do you think? Certainly, we can't turn this area into a garage. It's Jacobean architecture. I'd say these would be pilasters and not busteries, but you never really know. They really like mixing up these elements. You could say it was pretty avant-garde at the time. We might hit a support beam if we're not careful. And in layman's terms, for what I can say here, we could risk great damage to the house if we tried turning the dining hall into a garage. The man didn't look too pleased at this. There's a look of disappointment before he sighs and looks around the place with an air of defeat. When he moves to speak, I dread another unreasonable demand. Again! This will stay a dining hall then. But if I may have another request instead, at least sparse the place up with some flowers, some plants or something. It feels so old and dead in here. That's hardly unreasonable. Daffodils are a must, I presume. The look that passes between the two of them, there is a genuine look of fondness there. This is the first time I've seen such an exchange between the two of them. If anyone are to see them like this, there's little doubt that they loved each other. Of course, and I want a garden full of them. Now, if you excuse me, I'd like to look at the rest of the house. I'll just be around here downstairs if anybody needs me. That leaves Mrs. Wright and I. He's quite fond of them, you know. I can imagine. He looked terribly upset when we told him we can't have his garage. I meant the daffodils. We always have a vase full of them in every house we own, somewhere. I like to think they may be about his mother. He never talks about her. I don't even know her name. Mysterious. He likes to flatter, claim that they remind him of me, but he always loved the flowers, even before we're married. We were married. We're married, okay? We married. Much like the piano, I don't take him for a person who likes flowers. Daffodils, or at least. What's next? Am I going to find out that Mr. Wright saves kittens from burning buildings? Nah, he's too much of a coward to do that. I don't think any smug rich person would do something that brave and manly. I'll go and snoop about upstairs. You go on and do whatever it is you have to. When she goes without even asking if I need her here, I'm left standing to stare at the walls. Really, I don't need to do a thorough inspection of the building itself. It isn't really part of an interior designer's job, but the architecture in me is committed to do so, doing this task with every project. If I'm going to make a living space that have both form and function, I might as well make sure that the entirety of it is safe for my clients. Since I'm already here, I roam around the dining hall to check things off my punch list, if you will. When it's time to move on, I hesitate. Mr. Wright said he would be somewhere around here on the ground floor, and I really didn't want to be alone with whiskey. Oh no. I have to look through the place eventually. Sure, but on the other hand, I can do it later when he's gone. I can go upstairs first too if I want to. Oh great, let's check the ground floor first, because that's what the first choice gave me! Alright, just because there's one troublesome client, shouldn't mean that I'll let him get in the way of my work. The parlour is my first destination, mostly because I figure Mr. Wright is hiding down in the wine cellar and making plans there. I'm going to bump into him sooner or later. I'd rather make it later. Much later. The place, or in my case, much later. Much later. Never. The place, upon closer inspection, is in good shape. I don't doubt this place was done with the most care, considering it would be one of the first room visitors would see during the open house. There's a stain on the carpet, most likely by one of the guests at the time, but it isn't anything a good cleaning can't get rid of. Next is the music room, or at least that's the plan. Locked? Oh, come on now. I rattled the doorknob again. I think I know what's coming next. I rattled the doorknob again, harder this time to double check, and even gave it a good buzz to see if it isn't a problem with the door itself, but no, definitely locked. That is weird, considering the rest of the rooms aren't. It could just be this one though, and I could try the other door through the ballroom if I really want to get in. And that's when I hear it. The sound of a piano. Though it just plays one note over and over again, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand, and I back away from the door. Though I wasn't exactly the superstitious sort, what am I going to do? The room is locked. I can just go back to it later. Maybe see if I go through the ballroom and... The music room door opens, and who else but Luke Wright stands by the doorway. He looks a lot like a cat that ate a canary, and I didn't appreciate the way his eyes linger on me. Isn't it common sense that locked doors mean someone wants a bit of privacy? You needn't try and break the door down. Or did you want to see me again that badly without missus? I don't see why you would though, Mint. Nothing really happened between us. Well, I wasn't looking for whiskey. I was just going around to do my inspection. Though it needed a push just in case the door was stuck and actually needed repairs. So you really are some fancy interior designer, huh? Had you told me you once were, I would have called you a blank taker. I figured you would be a, I don't know, an assistant going for a drink after a week with a blank or a boss. I'm just glad you thought me as any sort of professional with how how to pronounce that? I don't know. Ossified I was. I must have not looked the part, so I understand your surprise. He doesn't offer a witty retort, and he grows quiet for a moment. At first glance, Hannah didn't look like some fancy finance manager when I first met her either. She was the pretty daughter of this rich, powerful man. When she was introduced, they told me that she was there not as their man's daughter, but as part of the management. I thought it was dubious. All the beautiful women I knew before her, they used their looks to get what they want. And there she was, with all she could ever need in life. Yet she works hard to earn her keep. It sounds like you admire her. Hearing that, I too couldn't help but feel admiration for Mrs. Wright. You enjoy your job, don't you, Mint? It helps me earn my keep, as you would put it. A bit strange to say that out loud, but it gives me purpose as well. Do you think that then, maybe Hannah would want to go back to being a working person? Taking aback at his question, I'll wait for further clarification. What makes him ask this? And why me of all people? Sweet. It's all sweet. Still more time needs to press. You should ask her. Shouldn't you be asking her this? Isn't her opinion much more important than that of someone you just met in a pub a few nights ago? You're a woman, and I figure you might know more. I mean, people are always saying that women are fulfilled by having husbands and having a good home. Increased. But then, I see ones like you who look happy having jobs. Maybe she likes you and having a job would be better for her. Just because I'm a woman, you do know we don't all think the same way. But I don't know. I'm not married or anything, but this shouldn't be a complicated matter. She's your wife for how many years? Talk to her. Ask her what she wants. Don't you guys talk during supper or something? That gets him thinking. Or at least, it looks like it does. Well, I should let you get back to the work. Thanks for talking with me, I suppose. Right. But if anything goes awry if you take my advice, just remember I'm not some marriage counselor, so take it with a grain of salt. My marriage goes down, but I sue you, noted. Well, that's not too late. He takes a step back into the music room, shuts the door and leaves me there looking gobsmacked. He wasn't serious, was he? Fat man, I don't understand him at all. One moment he's the huge ass. He's this huge ass, and then he's this person the next. Odd guy, still needs a good ass kicking if you ask me. Okay, so forget about going into the music room then. That's fine. He'll have to go out there sooner or later. In the meantime, I can go around and check the rest of the house. All my worries fade when I step into the ballroom. And well, the whole place is just grand, isn't it? I can see why the Wrights made sure nobody else would take this place from them. Anyone who has it will certainly be the belly of the ball. It's pretty much one great big status symbol. I don't think I could do much of a thorough inspection of this room, so I note it down for later. Moving on to the kitchens, I check the ventilation and the general fire safety in the kitchen. This bit is important for a place of size. I would of course suggest bringing an actual fire safety inspector over for a more detailed inspection. It wouldn't do to see such beautiful architecture go up in flames after all. I take measures of the countertops and cabinets, note down what type of wood they used. They wanted some of them recreated to hide modern appliances. There's a loose floorboard in the furthest corner and some of the others have scratches. But everything else seems to be in decent shape. My concentration is broken when something knocks. You can come in, doors not locked. I wait, expecting Mrs. Wright or the butler to come in. But nobody entered. Instead, there's that knocking again. It's louder and more urgent this time. I'm pretty sure I didn't lock the thing. Alright, I'm coming, just hold on. When I move to open the door, though, I realised something. The knocking isn't coming from the door, but from somewhere else. The trap door! I pause for a second waiting. But the knocking has not ceased, and soon enough it becomes desperate. The dull thuds from before scratching to what seems to be... switching from scratching. Desperate and instincts at once, as if grasping for respite. Is somebody stuck down there? Freck! Where did that come from? How did it even get down there? That put the heart crossway in me, it did. I love cats, but they have no business giving people a fright. For a second there, all those ghastly rumours about this place had come flooding back. Now peering into the darkness of the open trapdoor gets me thinking, and it gets me curious. Seriously though, I should really make sure there aren't any more surprises from down under. I don't think the Wrights would appreciate it if we found a litter of kittens making a house of the wine cellar. Mr. Wright seemed to be the type to skin a cat if any of his precious wines were to be contaminated. I'm done with the kitchens anyways. Going down a flight of stairs while wearing heels is always a bad idea. Descending to the dark underground only made it worse, but I managed anyhow without any major slip-ups. These stairs need work, that's for sure. Surprisingly, the wine cellar is in good condition. No water damage from last year's flooding, and apart from the dust and cobwebs that have accumulated, The place will likely hold for several more years. Racks and barrels line the walls, making the spacious room look smaller than it is. I'm no expert, but it looks good enough for immediate use without any further additions. Bloody whiskey will be having a field day. I think so anyway. Until I feel something crunch beneath my feet. Whatever few bottles were left behind here are nothing new but glass under my heels. The cat's fault, I wager, and it made a downright mess with red silk pouring from the remnants of a good drink. There's a lot of the stuff for to have just been a few bottles though. There's a lot of the stuff for to have just been a few Somehow that sentence doesn't flow. A whole trail of it flows from the end of the room as I follow. I didn't flow there. Fully expecting a leaking barrel or a whole upturned rack. Instead, it just keeps going on and it stops in a large puddle at the very back wall. What a waste of wine. Why is it so sticky though? Ugh. It's thick too. Nothing like wine. Of course, it could just be mold. Maybe it's not wine. Go on, touch it, I dare you. Despite it all, I found myself answering because it's her voice. Amy Lorene. Lovely Amy. Pretty Amy. I can imagine her standing there with me, laughing and plastering me as I did my work in the way only friends can. She was my friend, the only one that I had at St. Samaritan's. I was a scholar, the charity case, in a school of privileged and prestigious young girls. They all looked down at me, if they cared to look at me or acknowledge my presence at all. All except her. Sometimes I wish for the good old days when we were friends. Now she's nothing but a ghost, though I try so hard to get over her. I really, really do. What am I, 5 years old? Damn it, it's stuck under my shoe. I double dare you. Hell, I double dog dare you. Don't be such a scaredy cat. It's probably wine. What else could it be? Blood? Don't be ridiculous. Why would there be blood down here? If I was the joking sort, I would have said it might be the reason why the previous owner sold the place. Maybe the ghost stories are actually true, and they wanted to get away from the walls that dripped of ectoplasmic goo, and whatever other gulls haunted about. Doubt it. I hardly believe in any of that voodoo nonsense as it is. But as I stare at the mess of my feet, probably likely like a fool while I'm at it, I notice something strange. It isn't visible, unless one is really paying attention. But I can see the red glunk slipping through a crack in the wall. What's this then? I worry about structural damage and damage to the foundation. I worry about the wine cellar, as the wrong conditions could lead to the deterioration of its contents. Its temperatures and humidity are not controlled. Up until I see how clean cut the crack is. It runs along the edge of the wall and vertically along it, where a door would be. Pressing my hand against the wall lends credence to the idea as I try to feel where it would give way. Oh, could it be an adventure then? A secret passage? There must be a hidden switch somewhere. Go look. This is the most interesting thing you've done by far. If there's a hidden room here, then that certainly explains the discrepancy of the mansion's floor plans. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that there could be hidden rooms and passageways all over the house, if were to follow the logic. And boy, isn't that exciting. This feels like something straight out of a game. Suddenly, she touches my arm and I flinch away in shock. That shouldn't be possible. I understand auditory hallucinations, maybe even visual hallucinations, but that was... You look surprised. What's wrong? You. That's not possible. You're... dead. Aren't you happy to see a dear old friend, though? I am hurt, I am. What the hell is going on here? Oh, isn't it obvious? I've come back for you, so that we can be together again. That smile says it all. When she touches me once more, I recoil. What does she mean, together again? She's dead. No, leave me alone. Leave you alone? But I just got here. Turning around, I've met with the Wright's butler, who looks at me with an indifferent look. And when I look back, Lorraine is gone. I was talking to you, just thinking out loud, is all. You should really avoid talking to yourself. Kind. Do more of that, and others will think you're insane. Yes, thank you. Is that all you're here for, or has your master sent you running down here for something? Oh no, I'm just here to admire the place. I have not been inside before. I thought I would look around before we return to the city. The car is already running, you see, and I suggest you go back to the foyer unless you wish to be left behind. It seems you are in good company already, after all, with this house and your imaginary friend. What, we're leaving already? But I haven't finished inspecting the rest of the house. Be that as it may, there's a sulking man-child up there who wishes to go home. We are all subject to his whims lest he throws a tantrum. I can't help but smile at that. He's a strange guy. I still can't imagine how he could work for a guy like Rook Wright. I imagine the blonde ass ain't an easy guy to get along with. Whatever Butler was having to tolerate with, I want 10 of it. And we wouldn't want any soiled knickers or spilled milk. Why don't you go on ahead and I'll be right there. Very well. Do be careful on your way back. I saw some broken glass on the way. It would not do but cut yourself. Yeah. I saw some broken glass on the way, and it will not do to cut yourself on them. That needs a bit of rewording, I'm sorry. I will, yeah. Just tell Mr. Wright to not blow a gasket or anything. I'll be there just a minute. Speaking of blowing gaskets, there's something else dangerous here. Whatever is behind the door, it could pose some problems. Best case scenario, it only ruin good stocks of wine. But who knows what else is that false wall? What else is behind that false wall? I'll have to come back to it. It's already dark as we make our way out of the mansion. With no lights, we are only illuminated by the headlamps of the Wright's car and the stars up above us. The sight of them helps me compose myself much more than several minutes of being alone did. The car's engine is running, yet the two of them still stand out of the lawn. Mrs. Wright is busy, eyes up to the stars, and Mr. Wright, arms crossed, has his eyes down on the ground. It is the crunch of the grass under my heels that brings their attention to me. About time! What took you so long? A minute later, and I think the house swallowed you all up. Oh, hush, dear. I'm sure she has her reasons. Marianne doesn't seem the sort to idle. Sorry, I was just checking on something important. See? Business is business. And they take time, love. You should know that better than anyone. So, Marianne, what do you think? Are you the woman for the job? I know we already signed the papers hiring you, but I want to be 100% sure that you are committed. I glanced back towards the mansion, knowing what I had seen there. That curious screen in the wine cellar, which is stuff I only heard about from horror stories, and her. I should feel a slight bit hesitant. I was lucky. I've seen enough films to know what happens when a promiscuous woman enters a haunted house. This is my chance to turn it down, make excuses, say that I'm up to a task, but I need to take care of my old sick father, just pay the fine, which is probably outrageous for a contract like this, and let it go. I should turn it down, but for some obscene reason I can't. In the same manner I haven't let go of her, or for regret that has shadowed me since that day. Much as I hate to admit it, even to myself, seeing her again with a mischievous glint in her eyes, the loose tendrils of her hair curled around her forehead. It's something I've terribly missed, and now that it's here, almost within arm's reach, my father would tell me, sometimes you just simply have to go through with it. Consequences be damned. And well, I really don't have any reason to say no, at least not something a client like the Wrights would want to hear from a professional designer. It's certainly an interesting place. You can be sure I'm seeing it through the end. Such dedication. Oh, I do love the determination. Oh, not Lorraine again! You were always determined like that, weren't you? Hearing that voice once again sends a chill running down my back. I can't wait for this day to be over. Okay. New article. Next one. Next one. Marianne examined the ground floor upon arrival at the mansion, with Luke Wright bearing her entry into the music room. She headed to the wine cellar. A ghost from her past visited her. Despite that, she gave her word that she would see through the project until the end. That is the way it should be handled. From the mansion and through the asylum, I rode with them in silence, but as soon as we hit city proper, I asked to be dropped off and bid them good night. I thought it would be best if I didn't stay too long in confined spaces with either Mrs. or Mr. Wright. Both seemed to cause me serious trouble, and if the project had been any less interesting or grand, I would have dropped it without a second thought. Would have, shouldn't have, won't. I assure them that my place isn't that far off, and I have to fight off the urge to roll my eyes and groan when whiskey throws me a little smirk. But even in my own home, peace is elusive, as is sleep. I lie awake, thinking of what I saw in that mansion, of who I saw. If I so much as hear a single whisper from her, if I so much as to see a wisp of her hair, I'm afraid I'll go mad. But none of that happens, and it makes me hollow. For 2 nights I've had trouble sleeping, but it's only one morning where fatigue has already let me rest, that I'm reminded of what terrifies me so. October the 26th. In my restless dreams I see that mirror. Wait, whose perspective of it? Are we going back to... No, it's still on Marianne's perspective. Story update, common route. This was a choice of checking the ground floor or the first floor. You should ask her, goes to bed, question, story update, common route, story update, common route. All of the story updates is like a butterfly. That's always been the theme of story updates, is there are butterflies. Butterfly effects. In my restless dreams I see that mirror, the one in the study, and in it I see her, I see them. Lorraine and Hannah. Hannah and Lorraine. What the? Poor pathetic Marianne. Work. She'll work herself to death. See, she doesn't listen, that's all she did. Look at what happened to me. They talked amongst themselves with cruel smiles and venomous tongues. Or rather to themselves, 2 heads, 1 body. A horrible mockery of these women, as if they were the one and the same. More's the pity. Life goes on and goes out, and she doesn't even see it. Do you think she'll even realize when she kicks the basket herself? When they say a person has a hard time telling when they're in a dream, it was true often enough. Even with this bizarre sight, even with the obvious implication that this isn't real, I can't help but feel distressed. Likely. Is that any way to live at all? She might as well... Okay. Cruel fate, but she is alive, am I well? Though they speak into each other's ears, tones low and hushed, I can still hear them as clear as day. Their whispers pervade the air, heavy and oppressive. They bury and dig into my head like tiny maggots worming their way into my skull. Is it only then that they take notice of my presence? Eyes turn towards me, and I can only smell small under the scrutiny. Caricature smile etches on their face, mimicking each other grotesquely. Oh, Marianne, how long have you been standing there, dearie? Come join us, Marianne. We won't bite, unless you ask, that is. Have you been looking at us? Spying? How scandalous, such a naughty girl. I'm sure you were just waiting for something large to happen, weren't you? You know she would not admit it. She thinks it's wrong. You said it so yourself. Yes, she thought me wrong, impure, abnormal, because I loved her. Okay. My breath hatches and I open my mouth to protest, but they stop me, screeching. The mirror that holds them cracks, lines spidering across its surface. Do not lie. We know the gluttonous thoughts you tried to deny, girl. All those desires you bury beneath that sickening guilt. You act the martyr. You act the martyr when you turn to the bed you lie in your own hedonistic hell. You are nothing but a tainted soul with filth-stained flesh held together by falsehood and pride. They look livid. And when it looks like they would lunge, I wake, feeling like the wind has been knocked out of me. With a groan, I squint and find a certain fluff ball sitting on my chest looking as pleased as Punch. She is the overlady of the cats, queen of despair and destruction of nice furniture. Though I can't stay mad at Her Majesty because it feels like she did something good this time. Is it just me or is the cat not cut up properly? There's a few traces of white lights everywhere. I was having a nightmare, but can't even imagine what it was about. Trying to recall leaves a terrible pit in my stomach. Maybe it's probably better if I don't remember it. Good morning, Brifnell. Who's a good kitty? Are you hungry? Is that why you woke me? A content purr comes from my sweet dear before she jumps off the bed and trots towards the kitchen. On the other hand, it takes a bit more before I roll out of bed and start my day. Mornings before work is always a quiet affair. Shower first, then a mug of coffee and a bowl of oats. Sometimes I do stretches, and I always check my work email. The rights will be moving into the mansion today. I don't think the paperwork is officially done yet, but it isn't too far-fetched to think they were allowed to start their move, despite that. Rich people like them will always find ways to get what they want after all. I'll be leaving you again today, Beth, so you behave and make sure not to shred up my new covers, okay? And don't worry, I didn't forget tomorrow is Black Cat Day, so I'll throw you a party. But only if you behave like a proper lady. She barely gives me a glance as I say that before going back to her own food. Cats. Still better than humans most of the time. Too bad I have to work with humans. You would rather work with cats, if you per se? The place is already busy as soon as I get here. The foreman, one that I recommended to the rights for his work ethic, is early as usual already. He's instructing men here and there like with the bigger loads. I have no chance to talk to him as Mrs. Wright appears and greets me with a smile. Mrs. Wright, I hope everything has been to your liking thus far. Good morning, Marianne. It has been delightful and these men have been very helpful. Look at all this, it's so busy here. I'm getting tired just looking at them go. No complications so far with the movers or the previous owners of the mansion, I hope. If anything, the only one being problematic is Luke, if I'm to be honest. He can be such a diva, but I do like that about him. She stops, looking up at the upper landing where Mr. Wright comes through the two other movers and the mirror from the study. Oh, do be careful with that mirror. Wouldn't want anyone getting hurt because of broken glass. Why are you even having it carried around? You did say you didn't want the mirror, and I keep getting distracted by it. If I'm going to turn the study into my office, I'd rather not have it there. Where could we put this? Well, you are not putting it in our room. Why don't you go? I don't know, put it in a wine cellar for now. We could figure out if we'll restore it in the attic or somewhere later, yes? You heard her, boys. To the cellar it goes. Mush! The same mirror that Hannah saw that hallucination. But why the mirror stares at us like this is a big question. We haven't saved in a while as well, actually. Actually, how long's it been? What, half an hour before the last time saved? Damn it. The movers bring down the mirror one step at a time, no matter how much the men tells them to hurry. An uncertain feeling grows in my stomach as I see our reflection in the bloody thing. That's the mirror from my dream. As soon as I go into the kitchen, I realise I'm holding my breath. I let out a sigh of relief and I think nobody is looking, and I go back to the task at hand. It'll be a terribly busy day, and there's no need for me to even think of anything else. I talk with the foreman, fill him with which room is which. It seems I'm doomed to not get any significant work done without being interrupted when it comes to those particular clients, however. Marianne, dear, have you had breakfast yet? Well, I do believe it would be considered brunch at this hour. Oh yes, Mrs. Wright, you must join me. Jonas has already been breaking in the kitchen, as they say. I do not see the others settling down for a meal any time soon, so I might as well enjoy the food while it's hot. And that someone might as well be us. I should say no, I really must say no, but the way she smiles at me makes it difficult to do so. Look how ridiculous I'm being, acting like a silly nervous schoolgirl with a crush. It's just brunch. Who am I to say no to a client? It would be impolite to do so, sorry. It's not like I'm going to agree because of anything other than propriety. I'm not agreeing just because she baited me to pretty eyelashes at me. If you insist, it really isn't any of those. But it's something about her eyes, rather. She looks like she needs a good talk. Her friend. And although I'm not supposed to be chummy with my client, there's no harm in pretending, right? Of course, I've been wrong on many occasions before. Maybe there is plenty harm in pretending that I care. Because pretending I care may lead to actual caring. Being alone in the same room as the missus leaves us reeling. As I find myself paying too much attention to her, it seems so borderline, unhealthy, how much I'm getting obsessed, even if it's just by looking. And it's the little insignificant things that I notice, like the way she plays with her hair, or how she smooths down her dress. Upper, higher, come on now! Whiskey's annoying voice in the other room helps pull me back to the ground. I'm just looking, aren't I? I know that someone like her wouldn't even look at someone like me. Still, there's some time to turn around this bad decision. I'd really like to thank you for inviting me to breakfast, Mrs. Wright, but I already ate, so I should really get back to work. Nonsense, you arrived so early. You must not have gotten a proper meal. Sit, I salute us in the dining hall. But it is a mess right now. Her concern is sweet, as is her smile. But I'm really not here for idle chit-chat, something I keep forgetting. Until meal is here. No more, no less, just to be polite. Thankfully, the conversation steers into a topic I'm comfortable with, work. This goes on for a bit, and I can't be more relieved. Most people don't understand calling me a workaholic, but I chose to work in a field I'm enthusiastic about. So what if my career is also my hobby? But no, really, how have you liked it so far? Oh, it has been wonderful, believe me, everything is going smoothly too. It really has been a long time since I've worked on something like this on a grand scale. Nowadays, everyone is about cardios and flats, living in a city where every room is an identical box. Believe me, this is very refreshing. We lived in a condo before this, Marianne. Well, I didn't mean any insult, It's fine, sweetie. Look at you all fuzzed. I was just pulling your leg. Luke wanted that penthouse when we got married, and you can thank him for purchasing this place as well. Wait, doesn't she own the house? I'm pretty sure I have no business with it though. It's theirs to hash out. But apparently the momentary confusion has been visible on my face. Don't be fooled, I'm just the treasury. I wouldn't be able to make a purchase this grand without the seal of his approval. I see. That's it, that's all you have to say? Yes, what else is there to it? Without warning, this nice, friendly chat devolved into something horrible, something sad. But I really don't know what to say, Mrs. Wright. We were talking of no topic in particular and... Luke. We were talking about Luke. About him not eating breakfast with you? About how him treating me if I was some treasury. Despite my general dislike of the upper class, I sometimes feel pity for them. They may have all the money in the world where material things aren't a problem, but they don't even see what they've become, where they've ended up, or what they've done most of the time. They're shut in by their own trap, forced to play along with society's expectations and do anything to stay where they are and to keep what they have. A world where even people feel or are treated like they are mere possessions. Where someone is at the top, the only way for them is to go down. I've worked with many Hannahs and Lukes and Whiskies, but I've never been one of them. I don't pretend to understand their world any deeper than that. I merely know what I've witnessed before. I will never pretend that I'll fully understand what they're going through. You know, I can make life very difficult for you if you speak a word of this. I won't speak a word, Mrs. Wright, but I understand a threat when I hear one. Won't you? How would I know? What guarantee do I have? Though I work for them, that doesn't mean I belong to them. I'm not the sort who gives my mind, body or soul to get rich. Only my hard work would be equivalent to that. And I sure as well be damned if I just blow down the intimidation tactics of spoiled princesses. Fortunately for her, I'm on duty. It's in the contract. She doesn't look tense, and I hope that the same can be said of me. But the tension is so thick and palpable in the air, it's only a matter of time before one of us wavers. The door to the parlour opens, cutting through the silence in the air like a knife. Madam, the photographer from Luxury Living is here. Even though we both rooted to the spot, until she gives in first and looks away in a huff. If you dare tell anyone about what you just heard, well, I'll make sure you regret it, Anna darling. Now, if you excuse me, I'll remain stoic even as she leaves, before making an exit myself soon after. Soon enough I found myself drawn to the kitchen where the White butler has returned to. We're going to end it off here today, folks. I think this has been well and truly enough like the other episodes we've had beforehand, and we shall see each other on the next time of The Letter, horror visual novel. Have a good day and take care of yourselves.